There is a lot of hype in AI and ChatGPT. There are people running around saying that it works all night and does all your work for you. Blah, blah, blah.
Automates everything.
I am someone who spends every single day in ChatGPT. I have yet to find anything really, really meaty where it's automating my life away. But I think the biggest reason I use it every day is an amazing place to do research, gather your thoughts, speak plainly to it, and get something of value out to take to somewhere else. And I kind of encourage you to think about it in the same way, because I think it's going to affect almost every single industry, some more than others, but in some way it's going to affect every single industry.
Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Next Gen Strategies podcast. Joining me as always, Mr. Tyler Davis, and we are going to be having one of those podcasts today where we're going to dive a little bit more into a specific topic and tool. You might have heard about this tool called ChatGPT. Ty and I have been talking about, there's a lot of really, really cool and sophisticated ways that we have found to be able to use the tool. There's a lot of ways that we were seeing other folks use the tool that we just want to talk about. Some things that are really good and some things that are scary and you should really be avoiding because there are also some issues. And, I'll preface this by saying he and I are not some wizards or claim to be, the know-alls of everything AI. But as we've, probably along with a lot of you have tried to test out some of these tools and the functionality, we're learning some things along the way. So we just want to kind of point out some of the things that we're learning and some things we're seeing. And we're gonna do our best to kind of walk through him from his perspective, his business and his clients, and mine as well.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of what we would call the language models available right now.
Yeah.
ChatGPT, Gemini, which is Google's product, Copilot, which is Microsoft's product.
Mhm.
And then there's several others, Cloud, Grok,
Mm-hmm.
you name it, right? We wanted to kind of iron in on ChatGPT just because we both see it as the industry leader right now. I mean, it was the one that kind of was the first too. I think Gemini is in a close second, and I have access and use Gemini, but it's just not quite there yet. So we kind of wanted to iron in on this one, and it's the most widely known at this point,
Right.
and has a lot of consumer users.
Right. Absolutely. And it's powering a lot of the other stuff too. Even when it's being adopted in other platforms and stuff, a lot of times you'll see it's being powered by ChatGPT.
Yeah. And I think the thing to get into here is that you'll probably hear a lot of naysayers about AI and ChatGPT, and you're also going to hear a lot of people who champion it as it's gonna run the world in 3 years. And I'm kind of hoping that we can be a level of a happy medium on this episode, because I would say a lot of accountants specifically have a significant distaste or fear, or just they don't like AI. And there are good reasons for that from the accounting community, but I've tried to put myself in a position to where I'm staying as dangerous with it as I can, and I use it every single day because I do think it's going to make a huge difference in the accounting space at some point. And I kind of encourage you to think about it in the same way, because I think it's going to affect almost every single industry, some more than others, but in some way it's going to affect every single industry. And simply just using a tool like ChatGPT as a part of your everyday life is going to make you better and give you an easier time as these features start rolling out into the things that you touch every single day.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I think a good starting point for today is just to maybe talk about a little bit in terms of if I wanted to start using ChatGPT, maybe I'm not, or maybe I'm just starting to dabble with it on personal, Ty, what are some things you should be considering between maybe even a free and a paid version?
Yeah, so there is a free version. The thing I would encourage you to do is download the app onto your phone, onto your smartphone, just because it'll probably give you more opportunities to use it. My dad asked me, he's like, "Hey, you've ever heard of this ChatGPT thing?" And he's like, they're using AI at work, because he's a machinist. And I said, well, download the app on your phone. And I said, just start using it as a method of kind of a search tool. Most people are used to using Google, or even using things like your Amazon Alexa to ask simple questions, or formulas or recipes or things like that, I would encourage you day to day, just starting with using it in the capacity and how you would look up things. If you're like making cake and you're like, well, how many, ounces are in 2/3 of a cup or something like that. Use it for those types of things just to start kind of getting accustomed to how it talks to you and how you talk to it. And I would stick to using the free version for this. Just to kind of get the wheels spinning and you seeing, especially if you haven't used it, how powerful it is on these very simple questions or any research items you have. Um, and then we can kind of talk a little bit about the paid tiers. And I usually recommend the paid tiers when or if you are like a power user and or you're going to use it in business.
Mhm.
So I started off by going to the plus option, which is the first subscription tier. I think it's $20 a month when I felt like I was more of a power user. So I do use it every single day and I use it personally as much as I use it for business. And one really cool thing about the plus account is it does two things that I think are probably the two more important things about paying $20 a month for it is it gives you, I believe, if this is still true as of recording this episode, it gives you the ability on the app to have the voice mode activated and it runs like in the background all the time. So you can essentially hit voice mode and talk to ChatGPT very openly, back and forth conversation for like an unlimited amount of time. And that's really useful for the little things I was talking about. Like if you just have some like ideas in your head and you want to talk them out on a car ride,
Yep.
or if you're cooking dinner and your hands are dirty and you just want to talk through some things, it just keeps going back and forth with you, which is quite nice. The other reason Plus is nice is that if you find yourself hitting limits, because there are limits on the free edition, on asking questions or doing research, then you may want to consider the Plus.
Mhm.
There is another tier after Plus called Business, which is like $25 a month, but it requires 2 users,
Some
so it's about
users.
50.
Mhm.
That's what you're gonna wanna get, especially if you're using it in business, because it starts to provide security-related items that you're gonna want, especially if you have any level of confidentiality that you wanna keep for, the types of data you're putting in it.
Yep.
Now that being said, I'll put a big disclosure out with all these AI tools. We don't have a lot of teeth to what's going on with security. So, like for instance, as an accountant, I'm not putting personally identifiable information about clients in there. I'm not putting social security numbers in there. Anything that's tied to the security of someone, I'll strip all those things out. But at the same time, I do want an elevated level of security. Um, so because I don't want my account hacked or this or that. So that's one area I would consider getting business is if you're actually using it for business.
Yeah, and I think that, that's gonna be super, important for, like, accounting, I would think would be,
Yeah.
like, well, number 1, marketing wise, like, yeah, there's maybe some stuff that I might have, maybe some rough numbers or something, but like, a lot of times, like, I'm not dealing with the super sensitive data either. But like, I'm thinking about like HR people, some of the things that they may be asking or querying, or maybe you've got a specific thing that you're trying to figure out for somebody because you got a question or there's an incident that happened. You maybe do like just be really careful with that. Obviously, lawyers, legal, like that's a big one. Insurance people, like probably not a whole lot, could be a little bit, but yeah, just I think regardless of industry, you want to be kind of considerate to what are those inputs.
Yeah, your options here are, I always say that to go to the paid, you still want to be like a power user
Mhm.
because even then, if you want to stick to the free and just strip out any, sensitive information, go right ahead and do that.
Mhm.
Um, but you do want to have like, the business gives other significant, features for business users. Some of those that I think are really important are right now, just recently, I think in the last month, ChatGPT is able to let you connect to other platforms. One of those being like your Google Drive, your Gmail, your Google Calendar. I believe Canva is on there.
Mhm.
There's several of those, and that gives you some ability for the Chat GPT to actually see and read those files. It could, one example with the business accounts is you can set up a task in there so that every single day it reads like your unread emails and sends you a message in the morning saying, this is your game plan or attack for the day.
Mhm.
That's kind of nice. And then there's some agent modes. You'll hear a lot of people talk about AI agents. Um, a comparable item to that is like a Zapier, where you start setting up automations. Well, the ChatGPT business plan now has agent mode inside of ChatGPT where you can start doing some of these actions and automations as well. So that's where I'm saying if you're a power user and really getting deep into these things, that's when those additional licenses are very useful, to allow you to start diving into some of those, hacks or automations that you want to try for your business,
Yeah.
which that's probably a good lead way into just maybe us talking about some of the things that we're actually using ChatGPT to do, and kind of starting from simple and scaling up to some of those more intense versions.
Yeah, I think one of the things to discuss, like, kind of in that is like, okay, so if you are a business user or you are kind of going into that like paid, more premium version of it, is like, okay, great, like I've done this, like I've set it up, it's accepted my payment. Like, what are the things, maybe from more of a business case standpoint, like you were doing with like your own business, or if you're dealing with like customers and putting clients in there, like what are some things that you've seen, Ty, like even on like the settings side, some things to maybe look at there, or how maybe you even set it up, and then I could talk a little bit more about how I've done it from my side.
Yeah, absolutely. So the more often you're using ChatGPT, it has like a memory to it.
Mhm.
I can't remember how long that memory is, but it's pretty substantial. It might be like 90 days. So it will start to learn a lot about you and use that as context for how you discuss with it. So like right now, ChatGPT knows what DAT is, right? My business. It knows what I do, what my typical scope for my clients are. So it's got that in the back of its brain as we conversate with it. And things you can do to enhance that is if you jump into the settings of your account, there's actually like an area where you can do a full bio about yourself. And you can say, this is me, this is what I do. You can actually tell ChatGPT what type of tone to use. You can give it custom instructions. And where that's important is if you do any level of research about using something like ChatGPT, the power is in how you communicate with it, how you prompt it, what rules you give it. Because if you just very lazily talk to it, you're going to get lazy responses.
Yep. And one of the things that Ty and I, we joke about, but we actually get mad sometimes, is like ChatGPT is naturally an agreeable platform. And so what it seems to be is like, and I don't have any great examples right now, but like as you're asking it questions, or maybe saying like, hey, should I do this or that? Or hey, I'm thinking about doing this. Like, what should be some things I should consider? Like, it's always going to like basically, I shouldn't say always, but like it's naturally going to gravitate towards like making you feel like you're making the right decision. And sometimes you need it to not do that. Actually, sometimes you might need it to tell you why you shouldn't do something. And I know that's one of the settings that you've sent in there as well.
Yeah, it inherently never wants to disagree with you.
Yep.
And I find that very frustrating and challenging because when I'm using a tool like ChatGPT, the reason I'm using it is for it to beat me up and to make me better.
Hmm.
And so when it just tells me I'm a genius all day long, it's like, well, what am I even using it for?
Right.
So that's the thing you can do in those settings is you can give it directions and you can Google people who've really put a lot of time into
Yes.
the prompts.
Yep.
And you can control how much it talks to you. Like how, sometimes ChatGPT like word vomits and gives a lot. You can tell it to like slow down and do bullets. You can tell it to be more disagreeable, all of these things. And if you do it in the settings, it's going to retain that
Yep.
in each conversation. Because if you just try to tell it to do that mid conversation, it kind of forgets it after a little while.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think there's a couple different there's two different ways you go into the settings. Like there's two different areas. I think one is for you, like where you're talking about like text-based settings. You can go there and like literally give it descriptions of like what to do. And then there's also some in there that I think there's four different settings. There's like, do you want ChatGPT to be like a nerd?
Yep.
Do you want it to be something like agreeable?
There's like sarcastic, there's nerd,
narcissistic.
Yeah,
Is that what was the
yeah.
one in there? I can't remember, but
Yeah, and then
but think through, what your maybe use case is and how you're going to use it.
yeah, and the other thing that you can do to try to get it to be less generic is that if you go into there are custom GPTs that are available, and you jump in, you'll see ones that ChatGPT itself had made, and there's a community built ones. And they just kind of narrow down what it does. One of them is like write like a human. That's one of them where it helps write more human based, which we can talk about that in a little bit. Grant and I have completely been able to tell anything that's written by AI anymore. It's very obvious. There's other things in there about like research. It'll only use like scholastic, references. Caveat on that, we'll talk about that too in terms of it's not perfect at these things.
Yep.
And then there's also what I call it, where I think it's still called, is projects.
Mhm.
Projects is a really nice tool, and I believe you might have to have Plus. I don't know if they have projects on the free version or not.
If they are, they're very limited because that
Yeah.
was one of the reasons I actually moved to Plus.
So projects are almost like these little subfolders that you can create inside of ChatGPT to give custom instructions to each folder.
Mhm.
So what's really nice about that is with a project, you can like feed it data. So like you could, like for instance, I have a folder that's like a project that's a marketing one. So it has my marketing plan in it, and it knows everything about my business, and it only references that material as like the guiding principles of what we're doing. And then I can also give it a role. Like a lot of times what you hear people talking about with ChatGPT to make it better is that you need to tell it where to find information and what role it is in. So like at this project, I told it the role is you're like a CMO, right? Or you're a head of marketing. And the resources you have are my marketing plan and current, best practices. So when I conversate with it, it's going to have that frame of mind of what my marketing plan is, and it knows its role. And you can do that in many different ways. You can have a, CPA role or an accountant role. You could have, you know, a CEO role. There's all kinds of different ones
Yeah.
you could do in your freedom and your creativity, or can be unleashed into those projects.
Yeah, I'll tell you one that I've used and I've seen actually a client or two use as well as like you so think about it as like this is gonna sound really stupid. Like when you're onboarding somebody new to your business, like you teach them all about your business. You teach them about your competitors. You teach them kind of what your processes are, your tool stack. So one of the first things that I have done, and I did this for my business, and now I'm actually starting to do this even for other businesses, is like, okay, so GC strategies, right? Like I'll say, so ChatGPT, I'm going to create a project or I'm going to create, understand who GC Strategies is. And I will give it my brand guide. I will give it my, here's my website. Go take a look at this. Here's a couple competitors or people who are like me that you should consider. And then I will tell it like, okay, here's some other specific things I want to call out. Anything that you give me, I want you to think about it in the EOS format
Mm.
because, I do think kind of by the EOS book, right? And so like something like that, or like, hey, like, this is how, um, here's my employee handbook.
Yeah.
Here is my, I use monday.com for my project management system. I use HubSpot. I feed it as much knowledge as possible so that then as it's giving me recommendations, like, and again, we'll touch on some of these, whether if it's operations, like, hey, create an SOP for this, or hey, I'm trying to do a process for this, like, help me understand this. It's always doing it from the right perspective
Mhm.
of the business. And to your point, like that way, then you can say, okay, so now, I want it as another project, you're going to have the role of this and this and this.
Yeah. And I don't want to jump too far ahead, but all of this, what he's saying, is really important because we're going to talk a little bit later about the problems ChatGPT has.
Yeah.
And doing these things helps alleviate some of those
Yeah.
problems.
The setup's key for sure.
Yeah. And I guess what I want to say first and foremost is that, you know, there's a lot of hype. There is a lot of hype in AI and ChatGPT. There are people running around saying that it works all night and does all your work for you. Blah, blah, blah. This and that.
Automates everything.
I'm someone who spends every single day in ChatGPT. I have yet to find like anything like really, really meaty that where it's like automating my life away. Even the things where it's like automatically send me, a memo about my emails and act like my office assistant. It's like, yeah, some of those things are nice, but it's not quite there. Now, people are getting better at it, and there are certain things that you may find that are super helpful. But I think the biggest reason I use it every day is an amazing place to do research, gather your thoughts, speak plainly to it, and get something of value out to take to somewhere else.
Yep.
So I use it a lot for communication. If I'm trying to communicate a complex topic, I'm trying to condense things down. If I'm researching something, if I'm doing some, calculations, but I cannot blindly trust it. I mean, it's me and ChatGPT going back and forth, me beating it up, and just to come up with like an example is I do like a monthly kind of controller report for a client. So I'll spend 30 minutes going back and forth based on what I know and, setting up ChatGPT to help me get into a really nicely formatted report that makes a lot of sense. But it's me beating up ChatGPT. It is not me saying, give me a controller report. It is a tool to help me, create a report that's really high value.
Mhm.
So it's one thing just wanted to impress is like you're not going to jump in there and just like start automating things. It's a large language model that's starting to add a lot of elements of automation that you can work on. But the biggest value I see right now is just that creativity, using a lot of creativity and creating things in maybe a faster way than you would just on your own.
Yeah, and I think we're kind of touching on some of these, and maybe to repeat a few, or just like, what are those things to like watch out for?
Yeah.
Like, because as you're jumping into this tool and you're starting to use it a lot, like, blindly trusting this thing, it can be really really detrimental. So I know we've got some thoughts around like a bunch of things you need to be watching for in your inputs and where it's going.
Yeah. I mean, we can start with communication. That's the easy one. We've, complained and talked back and forth about, it's pretty obvious when people are using ChatGPT to either respond to emails or make like LinkedIn posts because it writes in a very similar format each time.
Yep, the cadence is the same.
Yeah.
And and so you said LinkedIn, so now I'm going to go on my
Right.
soapbox. No, so yeah, the cadence is the same. You will see an overuse of emojis. You will see M dashes on everything. As it's listing things, it's always one, two, three. Like, like it always have like this very similar cadence of things, and it's something that a lot of people think that it's checking a box for them from a marketing standpoint or from LinkedIn standpoint. It's like, oh yeah, like I'll just tell it to write my LinkedIn post, or oh, I'll just, there's tools that say, powered by ChatGPT, and we'll do all your automated social posts for you because they will comb the internet and they will comb your business and then they will output your guys. It's one, you're going to potentially run into copy infringement.
Hmm.
If you get like, if you're really, really ripping things off, or two, like it's not going to sound like you, and you're going to look like everybody else in LinkedIn. And I'll say one more other thing about LinkedIn, because I think at some point in time we'll have a LinkedIn episode anyway this season. But be careful if you are like using it to like as a responder, of using an AI on LinkedIn, because like you'll see there's so many bots out there right now, they're doing the same exact thing. So just be careful there. But yes, that is one, is like the output of content for marketing is not great without some of the other elements going in there or having that human touch first.
Yeah. I mean, I think just think about what the end game is for what you're getting written, right? What's the use case? Because if you're trying to write like copy for like a newsletter or like your website, that's one thing to help, have ChatGPT do. But if you're writing emails to people or you're making a social post, we don't as humans speak that way. Like, yeah, ChatGPT is probably technically correct because it knows all the rules about the English and how to properly write. But normal people don't write like that
Yeah.
on a regular basis. So it's just painfully obvious when you see someone send you an email and it's fully fleshed out and it's perfect sentences when they know you just write way more shorthand than that or have a different tone. So some suggestions here is that what you can do is, and this is specifically what I do, I'm very much like a brain dump person. So I'll just like, without any care in the world, open up a chat GPT window and say, this is what I'm saying. I don't care if I spell anything wrong. I don't care if I capitalize anything correctly. I just word vomit into it on what I'm trying to say to someone. And then I'll ask ChatGPT to clean it up. It will do that, and then I won't like it because it'll do its ChatGPT thing and put the big dashes on everything and just look painfully obvious. So then I'll respond to it and say, hey, I need you to clean it up, but use my tone, how I write. Well, it's got 90 days of data on me. It's got what I just said
Yes.
to it. And then it will do a pretty good job of rewriting that in the way that I naturally write. Then I can use something like that. But the same thing I'll do, and I'm sure you did this in the fifth grade too, when you copied and pasted from Wikipedia when you were writing your papers, is you go in and you change words to your own wording, right?
Yeah.
It's the same as like when your teachers told you how not to plagiarize, is that you could take information from a source and make it your own words. And that's what I do a lot because it just helps you get to the point easier. And there are a lot of things you'll like about it, but then you'll be like, I would never say it that way. Let me type in something a little bit better.
Yep.
That's the way to use it to communicate.
Yep. 100%. And you just hit on something that I think is another good point of like, we're talking about kind of content stuff. Like, let's talk a little bit about research. because while you may be telling it to research a topic or companies or something, and it will like give you summaries of like, for example, hey, go comb this competitor website. I want to understand like maybe what their pricing is or like what are their features compared to ours. Um, a lot of times you'll do that, and what it gives you back is just flat wrong.
Yeah.
Like you have to like trust but verify everything. I've seen some examples there where like it will literally like go look at something and again, marketing side, sales side, whatever, you're looking for, competitor analysis and you're looking for like, how can you maybe leverage yourself versus others? And like as you're kind of building this thing up, like sometimes you're looking at competitors and then it'll give you input and I'm like, I know that's not right. And like there's been times where I'll literally be like, that is incorrect. And it'll say, oh, you're right. We just
Yeah.
whatever. And so I can tell you at least from like a marketing sales standpoint, like you gotta be really careful with like just blindly trusting that whatever summary that it gave you back, like was accurate. If you're using specifically, ChatGPT, for that type of research, because it can be flat wrong.
Yeah, I call it confidently wrong.
Yes. Yeah,
It
there you go.
very confidently wrong.
Yep.
And I have dozens and dozens of examples of this because I really push it to its limit.
Yeah.
Because I'm really trying to understand what can it do in the accounting space,
Mhm.
right? And I've given it, spreadsheets and data and tax questions and math, and I continuously find it making mistakes on very basic math that gets really frustrating for me, where it completely hallucinates and makes up numbers. So this is a tool. This is not a you get to interact with it and take what it pulls out verbatim. I just heard a story on one of the accounting podcasts that I heard where one large, very, very large consulting firm did a $500,000 job for the Australian government on a research project. And come to find out, they used AI to do it. And they were referencing books that didn't even exist, that
Yeah.
ChatGPT did. It was just competently referencing, this is a quote from X book, and the book did not exist. So you had to be very careful in all aspects. And that's why I'm here to tell you, like, it's not ready to take over and automate a lot of things. Now, could it at some point? Maybe,
Yeah.
but it's not there yet, and you cannot blindly trust it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think, again, how do you mitigate some of these risks, right?
Exactly.
It's that setup. Like I from my perspective, it's very much first and foremost like it's the setup. Like you have to consistently tell it, like again, remember you are so and so, and you're if you're giving it a role of something or like working within your business, like consistently referring it back and reminding it of like what it's doing because like you'll get a project set up, you'll maybe do a couple projects or a couple things within that and like it seems like sometimes the farther away you go, like you almost have to tell like, hey, remember this, you are this and this. Oh, and like the responses just cracks me up a bit. Oh yeah, you're right. I'm sorry. Like
Yeah,
apologize to
gotta
you.
agree with you.
Like it does. And so it's funny, but it's also frustrating as a business person. And so just like again, it's really in that setup and then just consistently reminded, or if it's been a while, like there's just little weird things that maybe sometimes will happen that I see. And it's
Mhm.
like you almost have to be like reminded like, hey, wake up. Like go back to remember what
Yeah.
this whole conversation type of deal.
Yeah, it's all in the science of prompting, which if you research that, there are people that are spending hours and hours and hours with
Yes.
it, really
Yeah.
how to prompt it. And we said this earlier, going into your settings and giving context, using projects and using context, or in your initial prompts. The more context and the more direction you give it, the better your result's going to be because whatever context it does not have, it's going to come up with on its own. And that may not be what you agree with, that may not be factual, and what you're gonna have to do is as you see that junk kinda come in is you almost argue with it. You go back and forth, you say, "Hey, ditch that. This is what" and you just keep adding context. And that's what I was saying earlier is like when I pretty much fight with ChatGPT. We go back and forth until I get to that end product that I really want out of it.
Yep. Yep. So anything else like warnings or things that we should see, like you should watch out for before we go into maybe some applicable ways and like how we're using it?
Yeah, one thing I didn't get to bring up just yet is that there are a bazillion new startups and softwares out there that are like targeting very specific things. I'll give an example. There's one that specifically targets tax research, and they call it, whatever AI research. And all it is someone who created a business and put a wrapper over ChatGPT and said they told it to only research under like IRS. So you're gonna see a lot of that where there are these startups that are like saying, use this tool. This is very specific to what you need. And you don't have to, like, you can stick to your ChatGPT if you get good at this prompting and setting these scenes and giving all this context, because there's all of these different businesses popping up, really just using ChatGPT inside of a narrow context.
Yeah, 100%. So watch out for what the real maybe differentiators are on something, or maybe you would use one of those tools if you're just not comfortable with this piece. But at the end of the day, like most of these tools, or if you're in GPT, like you have to get a below the surface level to
Yeah.
get really good results back from them. And the prompting, regardless of if it's native within a tool, like, you mentioned Copilot,
Yeah.
Gemini, like at the end of the day, your prompting is really still going to be really, really key, and understanding that it's got the right like basis for pulling whatever recommendations it's making.
It's just funny to see it change, because back when it came out, which was towards the end of 2022, I think people started using it into
Mm.
2023. It was unbelievable. You're like, look how it can write all this stuff. And like people were blatantly just using it as it said. And I was one of them. But now that a ton of people are using it, we're talking about the painfully obvious things that can be seen now.
Yeah.
And people don't want to communicate with another chat GPT. They want to talk to you as a person, right? And if you're painfully obviously using these tools, it's going to negatively impact you.
Yeah, 100%. So let's talk a little bit about like some ways that we are using it, and some things that we have seen it do really well. And I actually want to kind of go first on this one. So, as somebody who, I'm a marketing guy, sales guy, like one of the things that I, have really had to rely on it for is something I don't do all the time, which is like procedures and like listing like
Mm.
SOP types of stuff. It is something that I really probably rely on it, and I've seen really, really good output when I say like, hey, so voice feature, right?
Yep.
So this is where I will say like, hey, I am using, I need to create a standard operating procedure or a process for this. And this is what I do. So like, this is let's just, I don't know, let's come up with an easy one. I need to tell it like how to save this is how I save files and then move things and send it to a client. I don't know. So maybe there's like a 5, 6 step process, and there's 3 different tools that I do. So like before, people would have to be like, okay, so they're typing all this stuff out where it's like, okay, first, like open up window, log into this, now move to here, now go to here. And in 3 minutes, I turn on the voice feature, and I'm like, okay, so I log into app number one, I do this, this, and this, I save, I move, I do, and I just literally talk to it what's in my brain, and I say, okay, so now create a standard operating procedure that highlights these things. Start with it in like a bullet checklist format before you give me like a full paragraph of everything that I just said, and then I also tell it here's something key. Who is the end audience who you want it to use? Like, for example, I'm training a blank who needs to understand these things. That's been probably my biggest use case for ChatGPT, is like process explainers and procedures in a way that's super easy for somebody to see. And again, I just used a quick example. I'm sure maybe you're using it from the process side as well, or some other ways.
Yeah, I think that's where I was going to jump, is that creating policies and procedures is like the best thing ever. Because if you've ever looked at policies and procedures, they're like, always lots of pages, and there's reasons why.
Mhm.
Specifically from an HR standpoint, you have to be very cover all your bases, direct, and all of that. And it does a really good job if you're like, hey, I want to create a paid time off policy for all my employees.
Yeah.
Spin something up for me. Here's what I'll tell you. It's going to spin you up something pretty nice. Don't just take that, right? Now, like, read what it gave you, change some things, make it make more sense for your business, but boom, you just knocked out your PTO policy.
Yep.
Next, oh, you need to have, an information sheet about your company 401k. Give it all the information. Pops it out
Can,
for you.
can I
All those things.
can I go back on that? So on the like HR policies or stuff, like maybe you're somebody like me who doesn't even know where to start sometimes to
And
some
it
that.
starts you out.
Ask it to give you the right prompt.
Mhm.
Ask it to ask you the right questions to get to an output, because sometimes you maybe don't even know where you're starting, and you can be like, hey, you're going to serve as an HR advisor right now. I want you to ask me the right questions to develop a PTO policy for somebody like me who goes, oh yeah, no, I want to do that. Yes, I want to do that. Like that's also a good way to use it too.
Very good point, and we did not talk about that today. That is a unique way of getting to a quality product with ChatGPT. Anything you're doing, you can just say, "This is what I want to do. Ask me single questions until we get to an end product,"
Yes.
and that will cut down a little bit of time. Because what I do now that I've used it so much is I'll just like give me the thing, I'll read it, and I'll tell it to change it. What you're suggesting is probably a more efficient way, especially for a new user,
Yes.
just like one by one by one. And what I find that it does is it tends to bring up things that you would have never thought of to put in there. So like the other day, which I think you were on some of the emails, I created like a month-end process for one of the nonprofits that we help with for QuickBooks. And I was like, well, I know exactly what to do, but I'm going to write this and no one's going to understand it because it's just the way I write in my brain on how
Yep.
QuickBooks works. So I gave it some context. And then it was like, well, we're going to add the pass, the path to where you're going to go. So if you want to go to the bank reconciliation window, well, QuickBooks, if any of you have it, it's updated and it's hard to find now.
Yeah. And it'll just keep happening because QuickBooks just loves to not keep anything consistent and keep trying to upsell you within the platform and keep changing things for normal people like me and not be able to find it. Anyway, go ahead. Sorry. Good, Ty.
It was smart enough to know that we should do the pass though, and how to get there because it is kind of hard to find it.
Yep.
So then I'm like, great. Well, I said, well, ask me what the paths are because I know you don't know right now because it just changed and I'll tell you all the paths. So now it's got this, it just puts it in a format that's easier for someone else to use that I would have never thought of.
Yep. Yep. 100%. Yeah. I mean, process, explainers. I mean, really anything, like procedure I found has been really effective. I won't rehash it too much, but again, from a marketing standpoint, like if you're somebody who's looking to maybe like what types of things should I be marketing about my business? Again, if you start with kind of like inputting like your brand guide and a brand voice and stuff, it could be really useful for giving you ideas there. Ideas, don't take it as for granted, like always kind of put your thumb on it. Something else that I have seen it be really, really good about is like being able to take transcripts from things. So like if you have recordings, a podcast like this, a video, like it does have the ability to like listen to those and then pull transcripts down. And sometimes here's a quick little hack. And I don't know if this is going to sound really stupid, but I'll say I've done it before. Maybe somebody will get in the comments and tell me like, hey, you idiot, there might be a better way to do this. Sometimes like if you're trying to load a file or like a large audio file into ChatGPT, it's got a certain limit on I forget what the limit is. So what you can do though is like I've quite literally played a video, and I'll tell it, right. So like, let's say for example, I've got a 2-minute testimonial video from a great customer of mine, and I want to say like, hey, I want you to listen to what this customer says about me and then give me some ideas for like how to repurpose this content, or like I want to pull these words out because I want to use this for like keyword research or whatever it is, right? But sometimes like to be able to upload a file directly to that $20 a month ChatGPT, it's too big and you can't use it or it'll mess something up. I quite literally will use the voice feature. So I will pull it up on YouTube YouTube has transcripts, but maybe I don't have it on YouTube yet. I will quite literally play it on my phone, on my computer. I turn the dictation feature on, the voice listening thing, and I just play it and like it'll listen to it. And I did one the other day, and then I used a real transcription tool just to compare the two. It was probably 95% accurate.
That's an interesting way to do that.
And then I just quite literally like and then all my words were in there, and I said, okay, clean this up, yada, yada, yada. You can also do that with meeting transcriptions, right? So like, let's say, for example, you've got an in-person meeting and you're not always on Zoom or you're not always doing this. I've done this with clients where I'm like, hey, like, is it cool if I just quick record this? Like, we're going to be talking more specifically about certain thing. And I just want to make sure I've got it for my notes. And like, most of the time I'm like, yeah, like this is marketing stuff, blah, blah, again, marketing perspective, but like, that's something else. Like use it to transcript, if you're not, doing a Zoom call or where, one of the 50,000 AI note takers that are out there, like if your person it's really, really strong and good for that too. And again, I'm coming up from the marketing perspective. Like if you can pull human conversation of whatever it is you're talking about, heck, maybe you're an engineer, you're discussing specs with a customer and you want to hear their feedback on something to reference later. Like the transcription piece and the voice piece, I think is probably criminally underutilized. There's a lot of opportunity there.
Yeah, I like all of those things a lot better. I wish I could sit here and tell you that it's doing a bang up job in financial analysis and accounting and things of that nature. I think it will get better, but I can't trust the reliability of the math right now. I use it all the time and I know where its faults are and I can kind of beat it up enough to get where I need to go. But I don't want to tell anybody to trust like throwing their numbers in. And a simple example is I was trying to do 2026 budget for myself and one of the entities I work with. And it was just blatantly making up numbers over and over again. and doing a really poor job. And it got so frustrating that I kind of just did it myself outside of that. But we're going to get to a point, an interesting story I can tell you, not to make this podcast forever long, is that there's a story about a startup founder who was suspicious that there was some fraudulent activity happening in his books. So he exported the entire general ledger out of QuickBooks, dumped it into ChatGPT, and just said simply, tell me if anything looks fishy here. And it found some stuff and ended up leading to finding out a fraud because it could do something that audits can't do. Audits are designed to say if financial statements are fairly presented. They're not designed to find fraud. They can find fraud. But what it did is it actually found, and I forget the term for this, but when people are creating fictitious invoices or accounting records, they tend to do it in sequences. Like back of their mind, they'll use like some sort of pattern. There's a name for it, and we learned it in auditing school, but like they'll always like have like a 7 in the number, or it'll jump by 13s, or like all kinds of different examples. And it picked up on some fake vendors where someone had a pattern and it said, you should just look into these.
Huh.
Yeah.
Well, that's cool.
So my auditor friends out there would be like, quit saying that AI is going to do audits, but I'm not saying that's an audit, right?
Yeah.
That's not what an audit is. It's just a way that you may be able to, and I encourage people to do this because I do it myself. Just dump out data, especially financial data, and just kind of play with it and see what say, what do you think of my financials? Do you see anything in here that you would do differently?
Yeah.
And it'll point some things out to you. Might not be interesting, might be interesting.
Yeah.
I use it in those ways a lot too, just to kind of get a second look at data.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. We could go on and on for like another hour of this, of just ways that we've seen it be used, see it not be used, frustrations with it. I think at the end of the day, though, like it's a great tool, and there's a lot of different ways that you can use it within your business, for your clients, and your personal life. But I hope also like listeners are realizing like there's also a lot of layers to this thing, and there's a lot of ways in which you could really mess something up. And so blindly trusting AI or tool or whatever, like it's not good. And so hopefully listeners, you were able to kind of hear some ways that we've been able to use it today. Some processes that we followed, just some ways to make sure you kind of build it from the ground up. And yeah, hopefully maybe there's some things that you'll take away that you'll be able to kind of use tomorrow, and use it within your business.
Yeah, you really need to pay attention to it because it's something we didn't say today is that even if you're not using it and you're not learning it, so be it. But you know who's going to be using it and can get you into some of these issues? Your employees will be using it.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you don't say they can use it, they'll be using it.
Yeah.
So think about that and stay abreast of some of the issues so you can identify them because it's going to affect you, whether it's your employees or vendors or someone at some point in time.
Yep, 100%. Thank you, everybody, for joining us again today. And we look forward to having another couple of really good episodes coming up after this. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to the Next Gen Strategies podcast, where we share real stories and practical strategies to help you grow your business. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to follow us wherever you get your podcasts, and don't forget to like and share it on all of our social media channels.